So tonight we are going to be talking about getting started with Schoolnet and looking for items in the item bank and building a test with those items. So we're going to get started with just a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, if you haven't already, you can pull up the slide deck using the bit.ly that I've put in our chat. If you don't see chat, then we will go ahead and go over our WebEx, which is our platform that we use for our webinars. So with WebEx, the chat is not automatically open. You have to use your control panel for WebEx, and you're looking for a symbol that looks like a chat bubble. And when you click on that, the button will become red, and then you will have chat open. Just to let you know, that is there, and we'll give everyone just a second. You'll also want to make sure your audio is connected. So with WebEx, you have the option of using a call-in or your computer audio, but you do need to make sure that you have one of those two selected, or else you won't have any audio. So just to let you know, what you're seeing on my screen is a projection, and you won't be able to actually click on it. So if you want to have the slide deck up, you're going to need to open an internet browser and type in the bit.ly that I've put in the chat. And I'll put it in the chat again. And then I see a couple of you. If you want to go ahead and type in a hello in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from, we will just give everyone 1 minute to get the slide deck pulled up. So I see some folks joining us from Cary, Greensboro, Fayetteville, Charlotte, Burlington, Hickory. Yay! Lots of great places all across our state. So excited to welcome you. So during our chat tonight, we do have a QA as well as a chat. So chat, you have the ability to allow everyone to see it, whereas QA is only going to be seen by me. And then also we do have with us John Mars. And John, I noticed it put you in as an attendee, so I'm going to try to see if I can fix that real quick. There you go. John, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm John Mars, and I am on the home base team at NCDPI alongside Pam. We thank you for joining us this evening.
Yes, no greater place to be than to learn about Schoolnet on a Tuesday evening, right? So we're grateful for your time. We know this has been an unusual start to the school year, but I hope you're finding a groove a little bit now as we get going, and I'm excited to talk to you about Schoolnet tonight. So for our agenda for tonight, we're going to be talking about what is Schoolnet. We're going to be talking about how we can navigate Schoolnet, some of the cool things that are on the homepage, as well as the student profile. We're going to be talking about finding instructional materials in addition to assessment items, but then we'll really focus on finding assessment items and building a test together. And then also, lastly, I have some resources to go over everything that we talk about tonight. So just to give you a little overview of the picture, Schoolnet is our instructional improvement system in North Carolina. It's part of our home-based suite of applications. So those applications that you log into from the NC Ed Cloud, those applications are designed to help you with the essential functions of your position. So of course, with Schoolnet, we're going to be talking about assessments as well as lesson plans, and then really analyzing data to see where adjustments need to be made with your instruction for your students, which is so important right now as we're looking at a blended or completely virtual situation where we are having to really get as much information as we can about student performance in a relatively short time frame where we don't have the students with us as much as we would like, right, with a traditional school schedule. All right, so Canvas, Schoolnet does also work with Canvas, which is our statewide learning management system. You can create a test in Schoolnet and link it to a Canvas course. Schoolnet also integrates with PowerSchool. So PowerSchool is our student information system, and all of the student information comes over to Schoolnet in a nightly sync between PowerSchool and Schoolnet. And also grade passback is enabled between Schoolnet and PowerSchool. So those assessments that you create in Schoolnet, you can transfer the grades into your Power Teacher Pro gradebook, as well as all of the roles for Schoolnet live in PowerSchool. So in just a minute, when we click onto the system, if you have any kind of role issue, such as maybe you see a previous school, if you changed schools recently, or if you see select your role box, that means that you need to talk to your data manager at your school. Your school data manager is going to be the one to be able to fix your Schoolnet role in PowerSchool, and they should know what that is, and you go ask them about it, and they can fix it, and then it takes an overnight sync in order for it to take effect. So if there's something wrong with your Schoolnet roles, then you go talk to your data manager and you should be fixed the next day with access. All right, so just a couple of things before we get into the content tonight for CEUs. You will receive 0.1 CEU, which is equal to 1 hour of credit for participating in tonight's webinar. There is no sign-in. WebEx keeps a track record of who has attended our webinar. We do recommend the credit for digital learning competency credit. However, that is up to the final approval of your public school unit. We will send within 5 business days your certificate along with a link to the copy of tonight's slide deck and a link to the recording. Please do give me that 5 business days between today and tomorrow. I have 9 webinars, so it will take me those 5 business days to make sure I've got all of those webinars and CEU certificates sent out. All right. If at any point in time you have questions, please feel free to use either the QA box or you can type them in chat if you think it's something that everyone could benefit from or potentially help. So for tonight, I do have a login right here to the training site. I'm going to be using the training site to demonstrate because it has masked data in it, since we're going to be looking at student profiles and student data. So I'm going to be using the training site. I encourage you to use your own production instance of Schoolnet. So logging into the NC Ed Cloud and clicking on the red house icon. So I'm going to give everyone about 30 seconds to get Schoolnet open in another tab. So log into NC Ed Cloud, click on the red house icon, which is Schoolnet. And if you would put in the chat when you are done, and then we will go forward. All right, I'm going to go ahead and log in to mine. So Tracy had a question. I'm not going to be showing Canvas tonight just because we don't have enough time in tonight's webinar, but we can definitely do that in October. And I can also send out the instructions with it. I will show you grade passback tonight, but not Canvas. And if you're going to be linking a Schoolnet assessment to a Canvas course, you are going to be getting grades from Canvas and not from Schoolnet. So you actually wouldn't enable grade passback from Schoolnet. And I'll talk about that when we get there. So good question, Tracy. All right, so you should be looking at a home screen kind of similar to mine, except instead of welcome back teacher, it should say your name. You want to look under your role right here, and you want to make sure it says what you think it should say, right? So your role should be teacher, unless maybe you're an instructional coach or an administrator, and then you might have either leadership or staff. Those are the other roles for Schoolnet. And then you want to make sure it either says the correct school or your district if you're in a role that has multiple schools. All right, if you don't, if you see something that's wrong, maybe it's a previous school, again, make a mental note to email your data manager or go see them tomorrow and have them check out your Schoolnet role in PowerSchool and update that. So with your homepage, we have our navigation on the left side, which we'll go over in a little bit. And then we have what we call these content boxes right here on your homepage. So we're going to spend the first few minutes just looking at the homepage. We're not even going to click anywhere. So we do notice that there's a update box right here. So on your production instance, it actually has some information about our webinars and a few other updates that are pertinent. So those are things that I type in. You'll also notice there's a what's new in Schoolnet. So Schoolnet has 2 releases every year, a back to school release in the summer, and then a release in January, February. So you can click on that what's new box to see what's new with every release. We will not be going over all of these tonight. I'll point out some of them when we come to them, but just to let you know that what's new box is always there. And if you want to read even more, you can read the release notes and just say got it to close the box. But that box stays there. So you always have a what's new box every time the Schoolnet gets updated. All right, so if we go here and choose our sections, you should see your list of sections from PowerSchool. Now, if you are not a teacher of record in PowerSchool, then you're not going to see any sections here. Because remember, there's that nightly sync between Schoolnet and PowerSchool. So maybe you're school library media coordinator, or you are an ITF, or maybe you're an AIG teacher. What happens is with Schoolnet, you either have to have a leadership role where you can see everybody in the school, or there's a process where you can request additional sections. So if you're like an EC co-teacher, there is a process in Schoolnet I'll show at the end of the webinar to request additional sections, and that way you can actually see classes in Schoolnet. Yep, and the same thing with pre-K, you'd have to go in and request sections as well. So just let you know, I'll show you that at the end. All right, so once we've chosen a section, if we keep scrolling down on the homepage, you'll see what we call the Classroom Assessment Monitor. This is a really important kind of dashboard, data dashboard, if you'll like to think of it that way, for Schoolnet. So you'll have several different tabs. There's district and local tests, classroom tests, standardized tests, and then upcoming tests. So we don't have standardized test data loaded in the training site, but we do have it in production. So if you click on that tab, you might be able to see things. Now keep in mind, we didn't give EOCs and EOGs last year, so we don't have the most recent data would be from the 2018-2019 school year in Schoolnet. All right, so I'm going to go back to this district and local tests, and we're just going to look for a second. Notice this is a district benchmark that's pulled up here. And if you'll notice on the left or the right side, sorry, there's 5 pre-formatted reports. So pre-formatted reports are things that Schoolnet automatically generates anytime a test is taken online. So this is one of the big benefits of why your assessment should be online in Schoolnet, because Schoolnet's going to analyze all the data for you and give you these wonderful reports, right? So there's a test summary, which kind of just breaks down by score groups how students did, a standards analysis, which looks at, of course, by standard, an item analysis, which really breaks down the assessment into, which questions were most commonly missed, a great report for your PLT kind of conversations about common assessments. And then there's also a standards mastery report where Schoolnet will put your students in groups for you based on their standards performance, which is wonderful. So again, if you're not seeing this on your screen, it could be because of 2 reasons. Either you've never given a test in Schoolnet before, so it doesn't have any data to pull up, or maybe your district doesn't give district benchmarks. Not all do. So if you don't have this on your screen, just watch mine and kind of just understand and know that this is what's going to happen once you start giving tests in Schoolnet. All right, so I'm going to ask you to keep scrolling down. And when you keep scrolling down in one of your sections, you should see a list of students. So the next thing we're going to talk about is kind of our student profiles. So if you'll notice, anything in Schoolnet that's blue is a hyperlink. So if you'll just take a second to click on one of these profiles, I'm going to click on one, and you can click on one of your students. And I see a couple of attendees have raised like a question mark. If you have a question, if you could please use either the Q&A feature or the chat to type in your question. When we have questions in a minute, I will get to those questions. So yes, you do have to go to NC Ed Cloud in order to access Schoolnet. If you don't, if you're having trouble with your NC Ed Cloud for any reason, you can use the login credentials that I have on slide 5 and log into the training site and just use that. So if for any reason you're having trouble with your Schoolnet or NC Ed Cloud credentials, you're welcome to join me in the training site using the login and the password on slide 5. All right, so looking at the student profile, there's several tabs. So as I mentioned earlier, so Michelle, in order to see a student's profile from the home page, you have to click on a student. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate that real quick. So just from the home page, we make sure you have chose a section. And then if you scroll down, you'll see a classroom profile with a list of students. Click on any one of the students, and then you'll see their profile. All right, so as I mentioned before, Schoolnet and PowerSchool sync every night. When they sync every night, they get all this data from PowerSchool, and it's in a very nice, easy to use interface, right? I like this better than going and looking in PowerSchool, to be honest. So I can see the student's address, phone number. I can also see if there's any special programs that they're enrolled in. We do not have EC data in Schoolnet. We only have LEP, and which is limited English proficiency or EL students, and gifted and talented. We do not have any EC data in Schoolnet, just an FYI. I can go over and see the current enrollment, any absences. Notice that's blue. So one thing to know about absences in Schoolnet is that attendance data is synced once a week. So if it's not synced once a week, so Michelle, I'm sorry, just look on my screen if you can't find a student profile, and that way you can look and see what they look like. All right, you can also go down and see their current academic record. Notice that this is going to be quarter grades. It's not going to show you any grades that are kind of like in progress. It's just going to show you the grades of what is going. If we keep scrolling down, we will see our academic performance, and this is based on Schoolnet, okay? And these are standards based. So a very nice little snapshot here, but again, this is gonna be based on your use of Schoolnet. So if your district or you haven't used Schoolnet very much, you may not have much down here on this for student profile. Standardized tests. So you should see things like EOGs, EOCs, SAT data, ACT data. We have for students when we were using MClass, we have the DIBELS and the Rigby TRC scores previously from that. And that information is there. Disciplinary information. This is not something that teachers can see, but if you are a leadership level for a school admin, you can see discipline data in Schoolnet. The enrollment and academic record. This is a very powerful screen because this continues to show we have all the way back to 2012 and 13 information for students as long as they were within North Carolina. If they got transferred out from another state, then they wouldn't see that. All right. You can also see their academic record, beginning with the most current year and going back several years. So lots of good information that we should have for students. And again, you can see their absences for prior years as well. Program data, the student doesn't have any, but if they had EL data or AIG data, they would see that there. The next two tabs, benchmark tests and classroom tests, is going to be looking at Schoolnet specific, right? So if your district doesn't use Schoolnet for class benchmarks, then you're not going to see much there. The next tab I'm going to talk about is the learning plan and teacher notes. So this tab is something that, a lot of folks don't use that I think could be very powerful. So this student is got some information here. So, there's a topic of discussion for a parent contact log. I can see when that was posted and who posted it, right? You can also look for student academic strengths and opportunities for improvement, as well as student behavioral strengths and opportunities for improvement. So here at the beginning of the year, when we're building new relationships with our students, this information would have been really powerful to have because you can see it goes back multiple years. So this tab is only visible to the teachers of the student as well as your school administrators. So just to let you know, anything you post in here will not be visible to the student or to their parents. And then we also have strategies and some checklists like areas of math intervention. So maybe this student gets word problems interventions, and now you'll see that their areas of math intervention, according to their MTSS plan, is word problems. So we've taken feedback from user groups across the state to improve this page to make it more user-friendly. We know of a few districts that are using this page for their MTSS planning and recording of strategies and interventions, and I think that's an area of growth. The last thing I want to show you on the student profile is their PNP. So in TestNav, which is what we use to give tests in Schoolnet, we do support accommodations. We have to go through the PNP, which is a student's individual profile, and add their accommodations according to their 504 or IEP plan. Only one teacher needs to do this. The other teachers of that student, as long as they enable accommodations on the test, the student will receive them. So I would make sure that you go through and mark these, but come up with a system, whether it's your EC case manager that goes into Schoolnet and adjusts the PNPs for students, whether it's a homeroom teacher, however you want to set it up, but you just check what they need. So the student maybe needs text speech and then extra testing time. So they maybe can get 50%, right? So that way, if they're on a time test that's in 60 minutes, they would automatically get an extra 30 minutes, right? And then you click on save. And now when this student takes a test, as long as those accommodations are enabled, they will receive them. Any questions about student profiles before we move on? And I'm going to look and see in the questions in the chat. So Tanya, you asked a question about how can I merge data from both of my student rosters. So we do have this ability here where you can create a PDF and then merge them together, but you can also, there's a few different reports too, so I'm not sure particularly what data you're looking for. Like, are you just looking for student birthdays and phone numbers that are kind of like on that student roster, or just let us know what kind of data exactly you're looking for, and I can answer that question better. So Trish is asking, what grade would you start this in? I teach kindergarten. So I do have a webinar recording called Schoolnet for Littles, where I talk specifically for an hour about how to use Schoolnet with K1 students. So I would encourage you to go find that link. I have the link to our YouTube channel on our slide deck. But basically, I would suggest that you could definitely use Schoolnet. It would just look a little different. Maybe you would have the question pulled up for the whole class to look at versus individual students logging in. Although the QR codes do make things a lot easier now with the NCED Cloud, the QR codes can make things a lot more easier to access. We do have picture-based passages for non-readers in Schoolnet, so that's another thing that maybe you could look at and think about as well. All right, I'm going to go back to home screen from our student profile page. So Tanya replied back math data. And that she gave a test on Friday and she sees one roster of students and not my remote academy students. So that leads me to believe it might be something to do with PowerSchool. And if your students for your remote academy are listed in PowerSchool, so I would suggest looking at talking to your Schoolnet admin as well to see what they can do, and then also checking the assignment of your test. Was your test assigned to those remote academy students as well as your other students? All right. So back on my homepage, and we're just going to go ahead and go over here to the left and just look at the modules within Schoolnet. So first is our reporting module. So our reporting dashboard is where all of our data goes in Schoolnet. So a frequent question at the beginning of the year is, how can I see my data from last year? So if you go to your reporting dashboard and over here in the top right where it says current enrollment, go back and choose the next year's. That way you can go back and look at all of your previous year's information in Schoolnet, and all of your previous students' data is right there. So nothing ever gets removed from Schoolnet. It's just when the change of year happens and EOI gets processed, it goes, it cleans all that data up for the new upcoming year. And a lot of people think it deletes it. It doesn't. It just lives here in your reporting dashboard. So if you've never gone into the reporting dashboard before, feel free to go into that, and then you can see all of your previous year's information. Yep. All right, so under classrooms, we're going to go and just briefly, I'm not going to click on these, I'm just going to explain what they are. Student groups, you can create your own groups of students, whether it's remediation, acceleration. If you want to create a group for certain standards, you can do that as well. Workspaces, Schoolnet has a portfolio kind of builder within the workspace where you can create a folder, students can upload work, you can upload work for students. The nice thing about student workspaces is it stays with the student, even if they move back and forth between different districts. We've had some talks about using this for AIG students because AIG qualifications are different from one district to another. So we've been talking to different folks about, hey, if you put work samples in the workspace, even if the student moves in between districts, you'll still be able to see that workspace data. Lesson planner. Schoolnet has a built-in lesson planner. So some districts pay for an online lesson planner. Schoolnet has one that's built in. You already have it. Your administrators can see it. So you can see my different sections here, and I can add files, I can upload things, as well as I can go into Schoolnet's instructional materials and add lessons to there. So we're going to go in and find a material. So in addition to the over 100,000 assessment items, there is lesson plans and free activities in Schoolnet. And there's things for everything. So I'm going to just go in here and look at painting. And keep in mind too that it will it will check your grades and your subject area based on PowerSchool. So I'm just going to clear those out. And maybe I was going to go look for arts education. So there's even things for PE, music, all different kinds of things. Notice that there's two tabs, right? So there's a tab for North Carolina materials, and then there's a tab for Go Open NC. So Go Open NC is our openly licensed educational resources, and you can search Go Open NC from within Schoolnet. And since we have single sign-on, if you click on something, and so, Julia, they're two completely different containers. So think about Schoolnet materials as within Schoolnet. The NC materials is within Schoolnet. Go Open NC are openly licensed. So the one thing to note is that those resources in Schoolnet are not necessarily OER because they may be free for people to use, but they're not openly licensed, whereas things in Go Open should be openly licensed. So I can go in here and look, and maybe I'm looking for, here, there's a lesson plan for a 30-second spot storyboard. Looking for an ad campaign for a new drink. If I wanted to, I can click on this and schedule, which will add it to that lesson planner I had. So maybe my world history class is going to do this resource, and they're going to do it tomorrow. I'll do the 17th. And then I can save and close. And now that resource is scheduled to my lesson planner. All right, so nice collections of resources here. If you're looking for things for your students to do, please feel free to look in Schoolnet. And then lastly, we're going to look at assessments. So first, we're going to look at how items are organized in Schoolnet. And so my slide deck has a lot of slides about what I'm going over here in these next few steps, but just wanted to let you know so that way in case you wanted to refer back afterwards, you'll know the slide deck is there. So we're going to go into Item Banks, which is under Items, Rubrics, and Passages. It looks like a little briefcase icon. And with Item Banks, we're going to talk about how our items are organized. All right, so we're going to look at what these item banks are and the questions that they contain, right? So now we're jumping from instructional materials into assessment items. And so our assessment item banks include personal bank, which is any items that you've created during your time with Schoolnet. I'm on the training site, so there's a couple of extra banks I'm not going to talk about, but they're just on the training site. Our item bank from 2013-2016 contains some of our older items, including if you're around when Classcape's items were a big deal. Classcape items are actually in this bank, so you can actually go back and find them if you used Classcape items. The Certica Bank is our item of licensed items from Schoolnet. Certica Bank contains all the subject areas and grade levels. Certica Bank, everything in all of these item banks is aligned to North Carolina Standard Course of Study. Nothing in Schoolnet can exist without a standards alignment tag. So everything is aligned. The next item bank is our Spanish item bank. So our Spanish item bank contains Spanish language items and passages, all subject areas, science, social studies, ELA, math, all in Spanish. If you know you are not going to need Spanish items, you can uncheck the box that says search this bank when building tests. That will help you eliminate seeing Spanish items. A lot of times we get questions about, hey, I did an express test and it pulled in Spanish items. Yes, Express Test will pull in Spanish items unless you tell it you only want English items, because an Express Test is literally doing a quick grab based on the standards you say. It's not being very decisive about what you want. So that's why I always recommend going in and finding your items first and building your test, which is what I'm going to show you in just a minute. Our next couple of banks here, I'm going to skip down to our CTE banks. So we have a CTE bank for middle school, a CTE bank for high school, which is our unsecured bank. So make sure that your career and technical education friends know that these two banks are here in Schoolnet. We have a classroom item bank. This contains items and passages that are similar in style to EOC, EOG questions that you can use as practice items. Again, all science, social studies, math, and English language arts in that bank. Our math sets item bank is brand new. This is new for this year. And it has our math items. So we have created the tests with the math items, the math sets that your Schoolnet admin at your district level has to either recommend or assign to your courses if you're a math teacher. But there's also this math sets item bank here if you wanted to pull in a couple of items at a time. We also have a released bank, which contains released items from the most recent released items. It does not have your ELA items. The new ELA release items do not have the copyright permission to load them into Schoolnet. So that is why if you're looking for ELA released items, you will not find them. All right. So now we're going to talk about how to create a test. So you can definitely go into tests and create in a test. I would I would highly recommend a manual test versus Express. Express sounds great because we always want to do the quickest option, right? We have 5 minutes before students are coming back into our rooms in a normal year, and we need to create this test, or 5 minutes before it's time for our Google Meet with them. Express test sounds great, but it's not, because it's going to ask you what standards, and it's going to ask you how many items you want to pull. It's not going to ask you very specific questions about what types of items. It's really bad for passages. If you say in there, if you're trying to do a reading test and you say you want 5 questions, you might get 5 different passages. So I encourage you not to use Express test ever. And I also don't like to use manual tests. I actually just prefer to go in and find our items first and then build our tests from there. So I'm going to go under items, rubrics, and passages. I'm going to click find. I'm going to go in, and it's the same search method, whether you do items or passages. The only difference is that it's going to link the items to a passage for ELA. So I'm going to go in here and click on find items. And notice again that because of the classes I teach, it's already got some filters for me. I'm going to clear all those filters just because I find it best for finding specific items if I just look for standards. Because my standards, when I search by standards, it has my subject area and my grade level in it, right? So like if I look for 4th grade math standards, it's going to have my math and it's going to have 4th grade in it. So I always just recommend going by your standards first. So let's go in here and let's go down into science. And let's look at 9th grade. And you'll notice as it pulls up the courses or the domains here, you'll notice how many items. And to go in there, let's look at biology. I click on the down arrow. And then I can drill down into the different domains within biology until we get to the exact standard and objective, right? So if I just wanted this standard and this standard, all right, and then I click save and close. And now I'm just looking at 100 items versus looking at 100,000. So I encourage you just to practice with looking at your standards. And I'll do it one more time. So I'm going to clear all my filters. And I'm going to go to select standards. And I'm going to go into my subject and grade level. And then go down into my course and then my domains, right? And then using those arrows to keep drilling down until you get to the objective. All right, so save and close. And now I'm just looking at the items for the specific objectives that I have. Do I know if the questions for Project Lead the Way Biomedical Sciences have been created in Schoolnet? No, I'm sorry, I don't. I would reach out to our CTE division because I know they partner with the new discrete math and math 4 standards are on their way to being added right now. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, they will be available in Schoolnet. We don't have any items for them, but we will have the standards at least. Okay, so looking at these items is kind of like a shopping experience. You notice when I check that box next to the question, it kind of added it to my shopping cart here in the lower left. So we just kind of browse on through. Another thing I can do is notice that over here on the right side, I have an author difficulty and a Bloom's level. If I wanted to, over here on the left side of my filters, I could choose which Bloom's level or Webb's depth of knowledge that I can, if I wanted to filter these. All right, I've selected 5 items. And I'm going to go into item actions and I'm going to click add to test. So this is going to ask me if I want to create a new test or if I want to add to a test that I've already started working on. So I'm going to click on a new test. And now it's going to give me all the options like as if I was doing a manual test creation like I talked about earlier. All right. So again, I'm just going to go down here and choose the subject area, the grade level, the standards document. You got to make sure your standards document matches your subject or else you will have error messages on your test. Your test category should be My Classroom if it's a test that just you are going to give to your class. Item test defaults. This is how your test looks to students. I usually leave them the default, but you can change them if you want to. Test settings. There's a few in here I usually enable. I usually like to let students comment on each item. I had a classroom policy where my students knew that if they guessed on an item, they left a comment. So that way I would know that it was a guess. Because how many times do we have students that, have a lucky guesser, especially for multiple choice tests? The other part that I'll call to your attention under test settings is accommodations. So I want to make sure that my students in my class that have accommodations marked on their personal needs profile, that on their student profile, that TestNav PMP, I want to make sure that they get the accommodations. So I'm going to check these boxes to enable accommodations. Notice that you have the option to enable or not enable text to speech or read aloud for passages. So that's something that you can customize. And then down here with test restrictions. So test restrictions, this is a new section for this year, and I'm excited about it. This is something that North Carolina specifically requested. So we can now hide correct answer choices. So in the past, you could either hide the complete question, or if you showed the question, it marked as a correct answer. But now we can hide the correct answers always. So that way, if you want to do test review or corrections, you can do that without showing the students the correct answers. So if you're excited about that, let me get a woohoo in the chat. I am excited about it. The last thing we'll talk about is all right, yay, some enthusiasm. I know it's getting late at night. Co-authoring settings. So co-authoring is the system for how we share tests in Schoolnet. So within your PLT, if you're creating a common assessment and you wish to do a co-authoring test, you click on the co-authoring box, and then you're going to select your co-authors. And so you can actually co-author with anyone in the state. It doesn't have to be someone at your school or someone even in your district. You can actually go in and look for anyone in the state and co-author with them. The most important thing to know is that co-authoring acts like a draft folder, right? So I can go in and make some edits, save, and then John can go in and make some edits to the test. The key thing is that we can only do this one at a time. It's not like a Google Doc where we can both go in at the same time. It says at the top of the document who's editing the test and who it's locked for. B, once we're done making edits to the test, John and I both need to make a copy of the test and assign the copy of the test to our students. That way, the co-authoring folder always has that draft test in there that we can use from year to year. If for some reason John schedules the test out of the co-authoring folder, it will disappear from me. And it will tell you that. Schoolnet will pop up a big box that says, hey, you're about to remove the test from the co-authoring folder. Are you sure you want to do this? And it happens. And so we just have to understand that if it happens, that John will make another copy of the test and put it back in the co-authoring folder. But just keep in mind your co-authoring folder is pretty much like your virtual binder of tests that you can use from year to year, but you always have to make a copy of it in order to use it with your students. So hopefully I explained that clearly. All right, we're going to click Generate Test. And I have my 5 items. And looking at the first one, I have no idea what it is. Just honestly, FYI, I taught social studies. So, but you can click and make any changes to the items. You can also drag and drop. I'll show you where you can make a copy of the test in just a second, Susanna. And so we can drag and drop, we can make any changes. So maybe if I have a student that as part of their accommodations, they have only 3 answer choices versus 4, I can click on the little trash can here and get rid of one of those answer choices. Basically make any changes I want to the test. You can add links, you can add pictures, you can add videos to your tests. There's a lot you can do, and in future webinars we will explore that more. This one is just getting started with the basics. You can definitely add a test that has both Spanish and English items if you are looking for it. You are not able to upload a test. So what you can do is you can copy and paste. So you would create your test manually and add each question individually and copy and paste it from your Word doc or your Google Doc. But there's no like magic upload and it creates a test for you. All right, once you're done with your edits, you click on Return to Test Details. And from the test details page, you have that lovely copy test option. So that's where you go in and anytime you open a test to the test details page, under test actions, it says copy test. And so that's where you would make a copy of the test. You can also download from test actions a PDF. So if you have a student that needs a paper copy, you could do that from that option. Just keep in mind, paper copies you're going to have to grade, whereas if the student takes it online, which they can, the NC Ed Cloud and Schoolnet is perfectly accessible from home, then you don't have to grade it. So I encourage that option. All right, we have 3 stages here at the top of the page. So our test is right now in private draft, which means only you can see it. And that means only you. Even John and I can't go in and see your private drafts. So if you have a problem or a question and your test is in private draft, we won't be able to look in and see it. So just FYI, private means private. But to get it to ready to schedule, we click on ready to schedule and it lets us know that we ready to schedule. I'll talk about how students take the test in just a second, Giselle. And then we click on schedule. And this is where we set up the settings for how students take the test online. So we have this first thing is about administration. So when's the first day we want students to take the test? When's the last day? I always recommend giving it more days than you think in case students are absent or, are late taking it. right here under test results and scoring. Notice there's 3 checkboxes. On your screen as a teacher, because you have linked classes to Power Teacher Pro, you will have a 4th checkbox right here where my cursor is underneath this 3rd checkbox. The 4th box says send scores to Power Teacher Pro Gradebook. As long as the students are taking the test in Schoolnet and not in Canvas, you can check this box. Do not check this box if you're going to be giving the test in Canvas because the grades have to come from Canvas. So just an FYI there. All right. Big red flag right here. Your test is unassigned. So an unassigned test means that the reporting won't work. And yes, Brooke, you can always go back and change test dates. So if something happens and you need to change the dates, you definitely can. None of this is irrevocable. You can always go back and change settings on Schoolnet tests. So we want to make sure we select our assignment. So by default, when we go to check assignment, it's going to come up with a list of all of our courses, right? So I'm going to check these 2 sections. Notice I can also assign to individual students. So maybe this copy of the test is my modified test for my students that need 3 answer choices. Well, instead of assigning that test to the whole class, I would go in and assign it to the 5 students that need that modification. All right, so I'm going to check my sections and save. And now my assignment for this test is 2 sections. All right, now I have my online delivery options. So test passcode. Test passcode is what the students have to type in to take a test. So what happens, this goes back to Giselle's question, students log in to NC Ed Cloud, they click on the red house icon for Schoolnet, just like you do, and on their home screen, they have a box that says take a test, and they enter this passcode and take the test. It says start test, and they start the test after they enter the passcode. The random passcode that gets generated in Schoolnet is random, and it's hard, especially for younger students. I would go in here and change it to something fun. Okay, who doesn't want to take a test that says pizza 2020, right? I would, right? 1 year I did candy bars. So every one of my tests, the test passcode was a different name of a candy bar. So just, kind of keep it fun for your students a little bit. It'll be something that's easier for them to remember and easier for them to type in. I've seen people do food items. I've seen people do sports teams, you name it. Just think of something that would be easier for a student to type in for their passcode and change it to that. You can't reuse passcodes, so that's why it kind of has to change every year. So think of a different theme. All right, Secure Tester. So we have something called Secure Tester in Schoolnet. It is a lockdown browser where students can't open up other tabs. Be cautious with requiring this, especially right now when we're in blended and virtual learning environments. If your students are going to be using this on a personal device, it will require them to download and install an application. I would not use this unless you knew for a fact that your students were all using school-owned devices that the Secure Tester application has been sent and pushed down on from your technology services team. So that's my spiel about Secure Tester. I love it. It's great, but make sure every student has it on their device or else you're going to have issues. All right, restricted test access. That's a nice option if you want the test to only be during certain days and times. Keep in mind that again, with virtual and remote learning, you're going to want to make sure you convey this information to your students that the test is only open from 9 to 2 on Wednesdays or however you set it up. All right, just make sure you tell folks that. Item features, track and display student response times is one of my favorite features, especially for security reasons. It tells me how long a student took to answer each question on the test. So I would say, item 1, they took 10 seconds. Item 2, they took 10 minutes. Item 3, they left it open for an hour and 26 minutes. All right, well, maybe there's something going on there. Either they were being really distracted and multitasking when they were taking the test, or I have other things I need to worry about. Scramble question order, answer choices is great. Time test, you can definitely make it a time test. Keep in mind timed test with test access. So we had an interesting issue last week where someone made the test access time very short, like less than 2 hours. So they only could take the test between like 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. But then they made the time limit 240 minutes, right? So the student could technically start the test at 8 a.m., but then if they were allowed to pause the test, maybe they went to the restroom. And when they came back to the test, if they were outside of this test window, it would lock them out of the test. So just keep in mind that if you're going to restrict your test access to certain times, I would make sure if you're going to time your test, I would keep it to a short amount of time. And so, yes, Tracy, you can change anything about the pre-made items. So the items from the item bank you saw in that test details page, I can go in there and make any changes I wanted to the pre-made items. So I hope that answers your questions. All right, so I would not recommend giving 240 minutes on a time test unless it's very specific in purpose, right? So if you're going to do a time test, keep it reasonable. You save and publish. Notice now it's saying my text-to-speech is being generated. So what it's doing is it's going through each one of these items, and it's going to make sure that that it generates. And depending on how many items you have in a test, it might take 5 or 10 minutes. I'm going to come back to this in 1 second. I'm going to go through the resources. So skipping through the slides that I went over in person with you. Just make sure you always assign your test. That is something that's very important. It's going to be the first question if you ever ask me, why did XYZ go wrong during your test? I'm going to say, did you assign it? Never create a test and just share a passcode after you've given it. Like say, okay, I created a test and I'm just going to give it to John's students by giving the passcode. What's going to happen is I'm going to see John's students' results. John will not see any of his own students' results, and he will not be able to share those grades to Power Teacher Pro Gradebook. Always make sure you do co-authoring and each make a copy of the test if you're going to want to share your tests. Don't just share the passcode. That creates a lot of problems. So we have resources here on slide 22 for assessment creation, co-authoring, test nav, math formulas, item types. Our webinar next month is going to be going about how to create items, make your own items. Where we talked about tonight was all items from the item bank. All right, I'm going to go back and my test is now published. So I want to preview the test. And the last thing I'm going to show you here is that simply, I would encourage you, if you're new to using Schoolnet, to actually go through and create a sample test and go through it with your students during your Google Meet or your meeting, however you're going to do it. Pull up this screen and go through the options. Show students how they can highlight by clicking on and selecting any text. Show them how they can cross out answer choices as they go through the elimination process. Show them how they can make a comment on the test. Also, your annotation with highlighting stays from one passage to another. So just go through this process with your students so that way they know how to use a test in Schoolnet and how to use the tools, because these are the same tools that they'll have on NC Test and other online testing platforms. So it's very helpful, especially for younger students, for them to know, hey, I can do all of these tools on a test. It's also a good idea to review your test before you give it to students, just so that way they understand and make sure the test appears properly. Because sometimes, especially if you upload your own images or something, something can happen. All right, I know we're at time, so I have a couple of questions here. Julia says, when you show student tours scores on test submission, it releases all the answers to you? No. Show student scores is literally a little pop-up that pops up at the end, and it shows them their score. It does not give them any details. Keep in mind, if you have open response items, your score is going to be off because it's just going to show you the score based on the items that Schoolnet can grade. So just keep that in mind. If students took a test, but the message says test not submitted. So when you create a test, you have something called a Proctor Dashboard, which I don't have yet because my test is not in progress until tomorrow. But it's under Test Actions, and it says Proctor Dashboard. And when you click on Proctor Dashboard, there's a Submit button next to each student's name, and you can click on it if you know that they took the test, but for whatever reason didn't submit it. So look under Test Actions, Proctor Dashboard, and then click on the little Submit button next to the student's name. All right, I'll stay up here for another couple of minutes in case there are questions. And then I'm also going to show, for those of you who want to stay, how to request sections. All right, but otherwise, thank you very much, and I hope you join us back in October, where John's going to take the realm, and he's going to lead a great discussion. All right. So to request a section, all right, in Schoolnet, there's a little person icon in the top right corner. You're going to go to My Account, and there's a tab that says Sections and Rosters. Now, for some folks, it's on this main screen and it says Sections and Rosters. For some folks, they see the tab. So just look for Sections and Rosters, whether it's on the main screen or not. And wherever you see a list, you're going to go down and it says, if your class is not listed here or you would like to request an additional section assignment, click here. And then you're going to need to know either the name of the teacher of record, or you're going to need to know the course ID number from PowerSchool. Or you can just search using your school and dropping down. But keep in mind, there's a lot of course codes for each test, for each section. So it'd be much simpler if you know the course ID number from PowerSchool. So I'm just going to go and search, but I'll show you. Look at how many sections there are, and this is multiple pages, right? So now I'm looking at this particular section, right? And so right here where it says teacher 2878 on your screen, you would see a teacher name. And you check that box and you click on request. And then it'll ask you, are you sure? And you say request sections. That is all you can do on your side. Once you have done this process of requesting sections, you need to email your principal and your Schoolnet admin for your district. They are the ones that can actually go in and approve your request from their Schoolnet homepage. So they have to log into Schoolnet, and there's a pending request button on their homepage, and they can click on it and see the requests for their school or for the whole district, and they can approve your request to see those other sections. So yes, so the key thing to think about is that requesting sections is requesting that entire class. There's no way, unfortunately, to just say, I need to see these 7 students. You have to go in and request the sections that those students are in, and then you'll have access to the entire class, including the students that are on your caseload. All right, so I've got a request for Canvas. So I'm going to pull up the Canvas guide real quick. And my apologies, my Google Drive has been really slow today. See if that pulls it up. Yep, there we go. All right, so I'm going to put this in the chat, but this is going to take you step by step. So the first step is to create your test in Schoolnet, and you're going to copy that passcode that you create, and then you go into Canvas and you go into your Canvas course and you put an assignment as an external tool. So I'm going to put this in the chat. Instructions for, there you go. Now, key thing is do not select gradebook, past a gradebook in Schoolnet if you're going to link the assessment in a Canvas course. It won't work. It'll give you an error message. So just keep in mind that once you link a Schoolnet assessment into a Canvas course, the grades will come from Canvas, and students can only take it in Canvas. They cannot go into Schoolnet with the passcode and take the test. It'll give them an error message. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. If you're going to link a test into Schoolnet, make sure you know that everyone's going to be able to access it, and that's where it is. All right, last question I see is talking about the Schoolnet for Littles. Let's see. So I'm going to pull up my webinar archive. Schoolnet for Littles. And here is, all right. So Schoolnet not showing on Canvas. So you went into your Canvas, you went into and you created an assignment, and where it says submission type, you put external tool, and in that external tool list, you don't see Canvas, you don't see Schoolnet. If that's the case, then you need to talk to your Canvas admin, because your Canvas admin has to install the Schoolnet LTI. And so if you go into your external tool list under assignments, not just normal external tools, but the specific assignment, and then where it says submission type external tool, and don't see Schoolnet in that list, then go to your Canvas admin. So the Schoolnet for Littles is K1, just to let you know. That's what I focused on with that. All right. Any other questions for tonight before we hop off? All right, so within 5 days, I will get you your CEU certificates. I'll also throw some of these links in the email, and in case anyone else had any questions. And we hope to see you in October. Thank you, John, for hanging out. Have a great night.
Thanks, you too. Thanks again for coming, everybody.